This is Launching Your Daughter podcast, and I'm your host, Nicole Burgess, licensed marriage and family therapist. The information shared in this podcast is not a substitute for seeking help from a licensed mental health professional. Now, here is today's episode. Episode 24. Welcome. Today's episode may be a little challenging to hear, may be difficult to hear. It may stir up past memories. It may stir up just feelings about knowing or have been abused by somebody. Today's episode is specifically regarding sexual assault, sexual abuse, and my friend and colleague Laura Reagan LCSW explains what that means, how to support somebody that you may know, or if it's been you yourself who has been abused, what type of support is out there. I think whether we want to acknowledge it or not, you probably know somebody who has actually been through this trauma. And yes, sexual assault, sexual abuse is considered a trauma. It happens more often than even I would like to imagine it does, but unfortunately it does. So I hope you find this episode helpful. And again, if you have been sexually assaulted, sexually abused, please get the support that you need to help you through this. Now, here is today's episode. Well, welcome everybody. Today, my guest is Laura Reagan LCSW-C, and she is located in Severna Park, Maryland. And I've actually had her on the podcast earlier this year. She was on episode 3, where we talked about kind of her Certified Daring Way training that she's been in and how she's helped parents. But today, we're going to actually talk about a little more charged topic. We're going to talk about sexual assault and sexual abuse, whether it's with teen girls in high school and or at college, and how to help support parents regarding that. Laura specializes in working with adults who have experienced some childhood relational trauma, such as emotional or physical neglect, sexual or emotional abuse, or they have witnessed domestic violence. So I want to say thank you so much, Laura, for coming back and talking about this very important topic.
Nicole, thanks so much for having me back. It's an honor to be on 2 times.
Well, and I know, you really truly specialize in trauma work, and I'm seeing it more and more in my practice over the years, and I've noticed just more of it recently. And I would like to tell our parents that are out there, our listeners out there, a little more about what sexual assault, even how it's defined.
Okay. Let me start off by saying that as a therapist, once you know about trauma and you are open to recognizing it, you'll start to see that it's so much more pervasive than anybody realizes, and it affects almost everyone in some way. So not necessarily sexual assault, but trauma. And sexual assault is a traumatic experience. And I define sexual assault as any unwanted sexual touching. So that could be anything from someone touching someone's rear end without permission, touching any of your sexual body parts without your permission, and that everything from that to rape. And so child sexual abuse, sexual assault where it's touching and not intercourse, rape, all of those things are covered by the term sexual assault.
Okay. And yeah, you've hit it too, to go back to when you were saying about trauma. It is very pervasive. And I think sometimes there is a misunderstanding and maybe it's more unawareness of what trauma is. I know a lot of times people think, well, trauma is if you're in a war situation or you've been through like a natural disaster, but it's much more encompassing than that. And today this is part of what a trauma would be is considered a trauma. When there's been sexual abuse, sexual assault, rape, all of that is considered a trauma.
Exactly.
So do you know the statistics I remember is like one out of every 4 girls, and I think it's 1 out of every 6 boys. Typically, I think it's under age 18 have had some sort of sexual assault, sexual abuse.
Some kind of unwanted sexual experience. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So the statistics are still there. I know a lot of times I've talked with other clinicians and they say, I actually think it's actually more than that, like it's 1 in 3 and 1 in 4 versus 1 in 4 and 1 in 6.
It's underreported and it's underrecognized. So for the person who has been sexually assaulted, they may not even realize it. So if they're asked, have you ever been sexually assaulted? They'll typically say no. Or have you ever been raped? No. That would be, oh no. But then when you ask more specific questions about unwanted sexual experiences, they'll go, oh, well, when I was in college, someone had sex with me when I was passed out from drinking, but I don't consider that rape. And it's like, oh, that is rape.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, people, it's part of it is just an awareness to understand what that really means.
Yeah. And I'm glad you said that or brought that up, because I also find some of the teen girls that I've worked with who are in college, and I recommend that if they're going to drink, they have somebody with them that stays sober, and be very aware of if they're under the influence, their judgment goes out, but it never, ever, ever means that they deserve to be raped or sexually abused or anything by anybody. Their body is theirs. And there is kind of a minimizing. It's like, well, I was, under the influence and this happened, but, maybe it was my fault. And it's like, no. Never, ever is it their fault.
Right. If you're intoxicated, you can't consent. So if you are unable, if you couldn't drive a car or you couldn't agree to a legal contract, you can't agree to have sex. So if you're blacked out and you don't even know what's going on, it can be really confusing, but basically if you wake up and you're like, I feel like I've had sex, but I'm not in a relationship and there was no one that I was interested in having sex with. I wasn't planning on having sex with anyone, and I don't remember what happened last night. Those are some clues. You may have been sexually assaulted, and it's very confusing because you're trying to figure out what even happened. So that's something that a lot of people in college do experience.
Yep. And I want to say, if this resonates with you, as for our listeners out there, if this resonates with you, if this has happened to you, I would encourage you, if you're on college campus, to go to the counselors there and report and talk about it, so that you can feel some support in that. And part of what my goal with having Laura on today is try to raise that awareness. And for parents, what are some things that parents could do, Laura, to help support their daughters if this has happened to them, whether they're in high school or they're in college? What are some steps that parents can take to help support and maybe even take some legal action against the perpetrator of what has happened?
Okay, there's a lot. There's a lot that we can do. I'll add that anyone who's hearing this and is thinking, I don't know if I may have been sexually assaulted. I'm not even sure. So I don't even know if I would want to go to my college or call the police. I need to just figure this out. You can always call a 24-hour confidential sexual assault hotline.
Beautiful.
And you can get that wherever you are. You can call 1-800-656-4673. That's the R.A.I.N.N hotline, the Rape and Incest National Network.
Yep.
The R.A.I.N.N hotline goes to whatever your local sexual assault crisis center is. So if you call that 1-800 number and you're in Annapolis, it's going to ring in Annapolis. And if you're in Alaska, it's going to ring in Alaska. So they can connect you with resources in your community and help you understand even, what your options are.
Beautiful.
So that's my little PSA about how to even get support anonymously when you're not even sure what you want to do.
Yep.
But how to support someone who's been sexually assaulted, whether it's your child who is 4 years old or 14 years old or 24 years old or anywhere in between or older. If you're a parent and your child comes to you and says, I've been sexually assaulted or I've been raped, something happened to me, someone touched me, I'm uncomfortable, the first thing to do is focus on how they feel and try not to be overwhelmed with your own feelings when you hear that. Mm-hmm. Because based on hearing that from your child, regardless of their age, it's horrifying to realize that that's happened. Mm-hmm. And when you hear that, you're flooded with emotions. And the first thing you're going to think is like, no, this can't be true. they are coming to you. They're asking you for help. This is your moment to support them. You could say, how can I support you? If it's a young child, you don't even have to say, how can I support you? You can just say, like, I'm going to help you. I'm going to keep you safe. I'm going to take care of you. So you probably aren't going to know what to do because we don't talk about this. And when it happens, you're trying to make a decision in that moment how to handle it. So again, that hotline number I just mentioned, you can call them too as a parent and say, oh my God, my child just told me this. I don't know what to do. They can help you just sort through, what did the child say? Okay, these are some options that you have, and just help you calm yourself. You might be in crisis hearing that, and they can help you get calm so that you can then be there and support your child. Because what you don't want to do is let them think that you don't believe them, that you don't support them. That is one of the most harmful things. I mean, being sexually assaulted is a horrible thing, and it's one of the worst crimes that someone can live through.
Right.
And yet they've already lived through it. And then they go to a person they trust for support and not being believed. People will tell you that's almost worse than the rape.
I've heard that from clients in the past where they had been abused for years by a family member or a relative, and parents or caregivers didn't believe them. And it was devastating. It was very hurtful and harmful.
That's right. So everyone from parents and caregivers not believing, to friends, to other trusted adults, to authorities not believing is extremely detrimental to the recovery process for someone who has been sexually assaulted. And the longer term, sometimes like we say, so how come some people have experiences that are unquestionably traumatic, but they don't develop long-term trauma symptoms like post-traumatic stress disorder? Mm-hmm. Some people do and some people don't. And one of the factors that's been found to influence that is how well they're supported when they first tell someone.
Ah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, we want to be able to trust the people in our lives to help us and take care of us when something terrible happens. And so it's really important to just suspend disbelief and listen to what the person is saying. And then the next thing that's really important is that for someone who's been sexually assaulted, sexual assault is about power and control. Mm-hmm. So when someone is sexually assaulted, the person who did that to them was taking away their power and control over their own body. It's a huge violation.
Yeah.
So the important thing is for that person to begin to regain a sense of power and control again. And when they come to you and tell you that this happened, taking away their choices does not help them regain their power and control. So if let's say your 14-year-old daughter tells you that she was raped by a 14-year-old peer, if you call the police right then and report that to the police without giving her a chance to make the decision if she wants to report it to the police or not, mm-hmm. you're taking away her power and control. So there are some situations where it has to be reported right away. Like if it's a child abuse situation, if a child says, our next door neighbor has been touching me, that has to be reported. Mm-hmm. But even though that has to be reported, it's important to help the survivor, who in that moment is a victim. They've just been victimized, mm-hmm. To regain a sense of power and control. So telling them, this is what's going to happen. I'm going to need to keep you safe. What he did was wrong. So we have to let the police know. The police are going to want to ask you about what happened. I'll be with you. I'll help you stay safe. So, as much as possible, allow the person to make their own decisions. And of course, if it's a younger child, the parent has to make a lot of the decisions, but still explaining to them what their options are is important. So the next thing you have to think about when someone has been sexually assaulted is, do they need medical attention?
Yes.
Most of the time when people are sexually assaulted, there aren't severe injuries, but often there can be.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, if there are severe injuries, they have to get medical attention right away. If there aren't any obvious injuries that need immediate medical attention, you still have the decision to make about whether or not to collect evidence in a forensic exam. That is a decision that needs to be made as soon as you can, especially if there's going to be DNA that's going to need to be collected. That's only going to be able to be identified within a certain amount of time after it happened.
Mm-hmm.
And different areas have different protocols about how long after an assault they can collect DNA. But it used to be, if you don't get to a forensic exam within 3 days after it happened, you can't even have the exam done. But that's changed because, for one thing, they can now find DNA more effectively. So their ability to identify it even after more time has passed has gotten better. Plus, sometimes there are other ways to collect it. So, I'm not going to get too technical about that, but basically, again, you can call that hotline
Mm-hmm.
and find out what is the procedure locally to get a forensic exam. Which hospitals have forensic nurses that can do these specialized exams. If it's a child under 13, which hospitals have a pediatric forensic nurse examiner, because that's a special, very specialized type of exam. You can't just take the child to the pediatrician and have them do an exam. It has to be done by a pediatric forensic nurse examiner.
Okay.
So not every, community has them in their hospital. So you just have to be aware. But calling those hotlines, the local programs will know where to go.
Excellent. That's good information. Yeah.
So I know I just said a whole lot when you asked that question.
That's okay, because it all will be in the show notes as well, just kind of breaking that down for everybody. I think, again, it's trying to give the information where parents may not have the awareness, teens, younger girls may not have that awareness, and it's trying to educate the community overall of what's okay, what's not okay, and what is available to get that support. I think it's important that it's known, because it isn't talked very much about, at least in my community. I don't hear a lot about it.
Exactly. People don't really like to talk about it. And that's one of the things I love about podcasts, is that people can listen to information about things that they may be afraid to ask anyone they know. And it's a lot more private. You can it's in your ear. No one knows what you're listening to, but you can get the information you need and go from there.
Yes, absolutely. You and I had talked about, I'm going to kind of switch this just a little bit, where let's say, okay, so charges have been pressed and they're moving forward with the legal case. And you and I were talking about something earlier before we started the recording about some cases that we know about. You had mentioned to me that if the victim, which is now becoming the survivor because they're taking their control back, right, that power and control over themselves and over the situation, trying to take that back, that they can actually have an advocate for when they go to the courts. Can you talk a little more about that?
Absolutely. So basically, at every step of the process of reporting sexual assault, you should have access to an advocate through your local sexual assault crisis center. Now, depending on where you live and how well funded your sexual assault crisis center is in your community, and how much funding your state allocates for this, you should be able to contact your sexual assault crisis center using that 1-800 number and ask for an advocate to go with you to talk to the detective. There should be an advocate who can go with you to the hospital for the forensic exam, or if it's a child, usually there's a child advocacy center where they do those forensic exams. So an advocate can accompany you there. You have to let them know, though, that you want one. So you can call the Sexual Assault Crisis Center and find out. Or if you show up at the Child Advocacy Center, you can ask, is there an advocate that can be with us? Because basically, advocates are specially trained. They know the procedures. They know your rights. They know how to help you by explaining your rights to you and helping you take control to make your own decisions about what you want to do. Because when someone's in shock, it's, they're they don't quite know everything that's going on, and they may just say, oh, I don't know, like, I guess so, whatever you want. And an advocate can help them say, well, these are your choices. Would you like to do this or would you like to do this? And I can explain, how both of them work to help you know which option you feel is going to be better for yourself, but I can't make the decision. You will be the one that has to make the decision, and it's empowering. So when someone's in shock like that, it can be very empowering. And the thing about an advocate is they're an impartial, outside, objective person. So let's say you've been sexually assaulted, and let's say you're 18 and you're a girl and your mom was really worried when you were going to college that you might be sexually assaulted, because everybody's been hearing about how common sexual assault is in college now. So your mom's been worried about it and you told her, don't worry, and your mom's been saying, well, don't go to parties, don't drink. And that's how it happens. And, because we all think that we can prevent sexual assault by not doing certain things, but really it's the offender who is the only one who can actually prevent it by not doing it to you. So you go to a party and you drink and you pass out and someone does sexually assault you. You may not feel comfortable letting your mom know, but you still want to get a forensic exam. And you're scared. You don't want to be alone, but you're so worried about how upset your mom's going to be when she finds out this happened to you. Even though, maybe you are going to tell your mom, but you're not ready to tell her yet. You don't even know for sure what really happened. You don't know, you're not even sure. You can't remember. So you can call that 800 number, or when you go to get your forensic exam, they should invite you to include an advocate. And if they don't, you can ask. And that advocate can be there with you and literally explain the process, hold your hand through the exam, and give you phone numbers to follow up, and then even talk to you about how to let your mom know if that's what you want to do. So, you don't have to make all those decisions with your loved ones right away when it happens, but you can still get support from an outside person. And so, like I said, they can go with you to report to the police. And if you are involved in the court process, they can go with you to court. So they can go with you to get a protective order if you need one, to ask that person to stay away from you. They can accompany you to court for that, and they can go with you through every step of the legal process, from the initial hearings, any depositions, stuff like that. If it's a civil legal case, even college hearings too that they have, an advocate can accompany you there. So, and the benefit of having that kind of advocate with you in court is maybe you don't want your mom or your parents, your siblings, your friends to hear what happened to you, that you're going to have to testify about in court, but you want someone to be there with you. But you know how upsetting it would be for them to listen to those details. And so it's distracting you from being able to sit up there in in a scary situation and have to tell what happened. You're more worried about how your mom's going to feel hearing that story. So you can say, Mom, I don't want you to be in the courtroom for this part. They have an advocate for you, Mom, who can stand with you or wait with you in the waiting room so that you can be taken care of. And there's an advocate for me who will be here in the courtroom with me and get me a drink of water if I'm needing a drink, or, asking if I can have a pause if I need it, or things like that. So, and they know the system. So, they can help guide you through what can be a really overwhelming process because it's all so new and you're experiencing the effects of trauma, just having to talk about this over and over.
Right. Absolutely. And I really appreciate the amount of information that you are aware of, Laura, because I was like, wow, I didn't realize all the different things that an advocate could do. I mean, I was aware of certain aspects that they could do, but that's awesome to know they can truly be with them every single step of the way through this whole process. And that as a teen girl, if you're not ready to tell your parents yet because you're, legally an adult or you're on campus or anything like that, knowing that you don't have to do this alone, that there are places out there that can help, and you can have an advocate to be with you every step of the way and let everything kind of slowly unfold so that you can process things and, again, feel very empowered, as you were saying earlier too. So thank you for all of that.
Oh, you're welcome. I used to be an advocate, and so that's why I know so much about it. And Also, I want people to know that those services are free, including the forensic exams. They're free. It doesn't go on your insurance.
Okay.
It's free.
Good.
So survivors cannot be forced to pay for a forensic exam. It's free in every state, and you should not have to agree to prosecute to get that exam done. You can get it done even if you're not sure what you want to do, but you want to collect the evidence before you lose your chance. Because it used to be that people could only get forensic exams if they promised that they were going to go forward with testifying in court. And when they're in that crisis, back at that time, it was like within 3 days after it happened, they're trying to make a decision, trying to think about what could be a year later. Am I going to want to do that? I don't know. So if I can't agree to that, then I can't have the exam. So that caused a lot of sexual assaults not to be able to be prosecuted because they didn't have a chance to collect the evidence because the survivor had to make that decision in a really tough moment. And now you don't have to. And in fact, a law was just passed by Congress. I saw about it today. I don't know if it was passed yesterday, that basically survivors have to be told when the evidence that's been collected is going to be destroyed. They have to be told before it's destroyed so they have a chance. Some places have a policy. Yeah, some places can only keep evidence for, say, 90 days because they just don't have the space to keep them all. And other places, they keep them indefinitely, because they do have the space. So, but before they destroy it, you want to know, hey, last chance, we're getting rid of this thing. And you're like, oh, maybe I do want to go forward. So,
yeah. Well, and again, it goes back to empowering the victim so that they're, as they're going towards the survivorship of this whole thing. It's let them be empowered of this, not the perpetrator. So I love that law has been passed. That's great.
Yeah, things are slowly getting better. Slowly. There's a long way to go, but things are getting better.
So true. It's a slow process. Well, I'm curious. I know we could talk about this, I think, really honestly for hours and days to try and really help people out. Are there any other, I guess, kind of resources that you would recommend? Again, whether a teen girl or a parent may think that there has something that has happened that would be helpful for the whole family, whether it's, again, R.A.I.N.N, that I'll put on the show notes as well, the advocacy groups. I'll look up some local ones too and put that on the show notes. Is there any other resources that you find helpful for clients that you've worked with or families that you've worked with that you recommend?
Yeah, your local sexual assault crisis center can be a great resource. Your statewide coalition against sexual assault can be a great resource too. There's the 1 Billion Rising, which is a nonprofit organization, is the biggest mass action to end violence against women in human history.
Wow.
It's all about ending violence against women and children. So sexual violence, domestic violence, all of the kind of gender-based violence.
Okay.
And I must say, sexual assault is not only a woman's problem.
Correct.
It affects, it affects women, men, transgender people, everyone, any gender. And offenders can be any gender too.
Correct.
So
yes, thank you for that.
It's not a male, female, men are bad, women are good kind of thing. It's anyone can be a victim of sexual violence. And so one good resource for male victims, I know this is launching your daughter, but we don't live in a vacuum. So
exactly.
Some people who are listening may also have a son. The 1 in 6 organization is specifically for male survivors of sexual assault. And there's a book that is really good for families who are trying to support someone who is a survivor of childhood sexual abuse.
Okay.
This is more for people who who are now adults but have been sexually abused in childhood, and for their families to support them. The book is called Allies in Healing, and it talks to you about how to support your loved one who has been a childhood sexual abuse survivor.
Beautiful. Good information. Lots and lots of good information. Great.
Yeah. I really could go on all day talking about this. I'm extremely passionate about this issue, and it matters. It's really important.
Yeah.
I'm looking I'm sorry. I'm looking at R.A.I.N.'s website right now, and it says that every 2 minutes an American is sexually assaulted.
Wow. And I was going to say, if part of this podcast can help, again, raise awareness and begin to end the violence regarding abuse, sexual, emotional, physical, all of that, if this helps take that step towards it, then yeah, we want to get those statistics down even more. So it's like they're non-existent. I know that's a far-reaching goal, but whatever we can do to help raise the awareness to end the abuse. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Before I even became an advocate, I remember I read an article. It was in Marie Claire magazine, and it was Eve Ensler who created the 1 Billion Rising revolution. She was saying that she is working to end violence against women and girls.
Ugh.
And when she said that, I was like, I immediately thought, that that isn't possible, because it's always going to be like, that's just how things are. But, and that was about 20 years ago, maybe 18 years ago. And now, I've been working to do the same thing for 14 years, and it is getting better. So it's, like I said, it's slow progress, but you can see a change. So that's enough.
Yeah.
You just have to all believe that we can make a difference.
Yep, absolutely. I full-heartedly believe that we can. One person at a time, and it has a ripple effect, and things can change. Absolutely. Well, Laura, you are truly just a wealth of information, and I so appreciate you taking the time to help educate and raise the awareness to our listeners, both parents, teen girls, both moms, dads, all of them, other therapists that I also know are listening to this as well. I'm curious, so would you mind sharing how they could find you if they want to find out more about you and your work, or if they're local and they want to seek therapy from you? How could they get a hold of you?
I would love to. For one, I have my podcast, Therapy Chat, and probably because it's easier than spelling out my name, my Therapy Chat podcast website is the easiest way to connect to me. You can find my therapy work, my podcast, and my blogs and email and phone number, all that stuff. It's therapychatpodcast.com.
Excellent. Well, again, thank you so much, Laura, for taking the time to go over all of this. And yeah, you being an advocate and you specializing in trauma work, it's just very, very helpful. And I hope that there's been lots of nuggets that people have taken away today. And if they are struggling with something, that they now have some places that they can turn to get the support that they need. Thank you so much.
Oh, thanks so much for having me on again, Nicole.
If you've liked today's episode, I invite you to subscribe on iTunes. This is also available on Stitcher and iHeartRadio. But on iTunes, you can give me a rating and a review. Or if you know somebody who is a parent of a teen or tween daughter, please pass this along to them. Thank you. Thank you for listening to Launching Your Daughter with Nicole Burgess, licensed marriage and family therapist. For more information or to stay up to date, go to launchingyourdaughter.com. You can sign up for my email list or join my Facebook group. Thank you.